Small one.
Just a few, Jeff.
All right. So shall we start? Ready? Thanks for coming. It's nice to see so many people from the community. My name is Manuel Lopez, and I'm a professor of religion at the New College of Florida. If you don't know the New College of Florida, it's the public honors college of the University of Florida system, and we're right next to the Ringling, so you're welcome to come anytime and visit. I'm sure some of you might have heard of us in the news recently, but that's not why we're here today. I want to welcome everyone to this opening of this public talk series that explores Amish life with a particular focus on the Amish community here in Pinecraft. This series will consist of 3 events, and you can see the 3 events here, and there are cards out there with photographs, beautiful photographs by Katie Troyer, and in the back of the cards you'll find information about the 3 events. The 3 events will be today. Well, I'll talk about the event today in a second. Next week, on Thursday, February 16th, J.B. Miller, I'll introduce in a second, will give a talk about the history of Pinecraft from the arrival of the first Amish here in the community in the 1920s until today. And on Thursday, February 23rd, we will have Stephen Knoll, who will give a talk, Amish Across America, Growth and Change Among Traditional People. And Stephen Knoll is one of the most renowned professors of the Anabaptist tradition, and he's a professor at Elizabethtown College in Pennsylvania. And both of those events will be also here at 7 p.m. So the one today is on Tuesday, the next 2 events are on Thursdays. So everyone is welcome to come. This public talk series is also part of a class, a course that Jamie Miller and I are teaching at the New College of Florida, and we actually have some of our students here today in the back room. That explores the history, practices, and beliefs of the Amish, with a particular focus on our local Pinecraft community. Our event today will be a conversation between J.B. Miller and Katie Troyer, which will be also signify the opening of Katie Troyer's photographic exhibition. You can sort of get a hint of the photographs there. After the talk, you're more than welcome to walk around and look at them. They will be here at the Carlisle Inn in the lobby area starting tomorrow until the 24th of this month. And then during the month of March, they will be the New College of Florida. J.B. Miller, he grew up in Pinecraft in a Mennonite family with deep Amish roots. J.B.'s parents were grown up in an older Amish home, but later joined a conservative Mennonite congregation. And his parents owned here in Pinecraft the Eaton House in the 1950s and 60s. He has been a student of Amish and Mennonite history for years and enjoys observing the many changes that are taking place in the Pinecraft community. He shares his love of Amish and Mennonite history and culture, teaching courses at Suncoast Technical College and now at the New College. Katie Troyer is one of the most unique and beloved personalities in the Pinecraft community. I'm sure many of you already know her. She grew up in an Amish family in Ohio, and after living in various Amish communities in the US and Canada, moved to Pinecraft in 2008. One of her roles here in the community has been the kind of unofficial photographer of the community. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with the calendar that she publishes every year with pictures she takes of the community. And she also has a quite popular Instagram account where she posts a lot of the pictures that she takes. And one of the things that is very interesting about her pictures is that she shows kind of her own perspective on the daily life of the Amish and Mennonite community in Sarasota. That's something you're going to witness in the pictures that are part of the exhibition. Today, JB and Katie will talk about her life, her upbringing in the Amish, in an Amish household, and kind of the twists and turns that her life took before she came here to Sarasota, as well as the role that photography has played in her life and the way she wants to portray the Pinecraft community. Before we begin, I just want to thank J.B. Miller for helping me putting this together, not only the exhibition, but the talk series and the class that we teach in the college. It's been an incredible journey to kind of learn about the Amish community and work with him over the last couple of years. I also want to thank Dan Bethan, who is a colleague at the New College of Florida, who put together the photos, the printing, the framing of the pictures, together with one of our students, Anne Gillespie, who is actually back there in the room, who also helped with a lot of aspects of the exhibition. And we would not have been able to do any of this without all of our help. I also want to thank our sponsors, the Mellon Foundation and Florida Humanities, whose funding has made these events possible, including the photographic exhibition. And finally, I want to thank Jeff Miller and his team here at the Carlisle Inn for their generosity, sponsoring some of the events, hosting them, and for providing the desserts and beverages from the Dutchman that will be served after the talk. And with that, I'll leave you with Jeff Miller and Katie Troyer. Thanks for coming.
Well, let me just make a couple of introductory comments. We didn't really know how many people would be here this evening, and so we just opened up this room. But next week we'll be set up so that both rooms are open right away in case you want to come and hear about the first 50 years of Pinecraft from 1925 to 1975 and some of the things that I discovered as I did further research. But this evening we're here to talk, as Manu said, we're going to have a conversation, Katie and I, And Katie, this feels a little strange because, usually we're sitting at the Coastal Cafe, having something to eat and drink, and people probably don't really listen into our conversation, but tonight we're going to have probably a couple hundred listening in as we talk. And some of these questions, some of these things that we're going to talk about, I don't really know the answers to myself. So as I was thinking about how we talk so that people will understand and be interested in what we have to say, I kind of said, I'm going to write some questions that I'd really like to know what you're all about. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd like to know a little bit about your. I know you grew up in an Amish home, and I'd like to know a little bit about your growing up years and a little bit about your family and brothers and sisters and so forth.
Okay, I was the fourth one born out of Buffalo. And my brother, excuse me, the last six father, he's less than a year older than I am. But, so I guess I just grew up. I mean, I was born and I didn't know I was different, and very sheltered home, very well taken care of and protected. And I barely knew what the outside world was. That's about it.
And what were your early years like? You went to school at some particular point with other children in the community and so forth?
Yes, I started first grade with a public school.
Uh-huh.
And I had to wait 1 year to start school because Mom couldn't bear to see me get on the bus by myself. And so my sister Claire, so I had to wait on my sister Claire. And I remember crawling up the bus steps, hand and foot. I mean, I couldn't get up like normal people could, but I got up the way I did. And school was new. And it was public school, all first grade. I mean, everybody in the same grade, and I was in. And one of the things I remember the most is, I don't know if Paul Kaufman is in here or not, but he was in a grade higher than I was, like second grade or third grade. And his classroom was right next to me. Okay, and every time I came out of my classroom, he and another guy would come out of their classroom. And they always looked down at me and grinned and they laughed, and I was afraid. And that stayed with me until 2 years ago. I met Paul down here. And I took after him. And of course, he was totally unaware of the effect he had on me. But he apologized. And we're very good friends now. I mean, that just simply cleared the air. Yeah. So that was sort of my first grade experience. But then we moved and we went sometimes to Amish school, private school. Other times we moved again and we went to public school. And it was just back and forth. So I really didn't settle down anywhere.
Uh-huh. Well, when did you realize that you were different? You were different.
I think that encounter with Paul and his friend were probably the first, at least that I was afraid of people, and very guarded. And then another incident that happened was at home. We had somebody drove in and he asked me, how old are you? I said, I'm 8. He said, no, you're not 8. You're 4. You're 4. Tell me you're 4. And I insisted I'm 8.
And you were 8?
Yes, I was 8. And you know, with a little bit of that, just a little bit at a time, I realized that I'm different. And I could never outrun anybody. But if I needed to, I would grab Eli or anybody by the leg and hold on to it until they fell. So those were some of the things that I did for self-protection, I guess, or just get the best of them. Because they were not always going to get the best of me. In fact, they seldom did.
Well, you know, one of the things that, and we've been friends for about 8 years. When I moved back from Indianapolis, I met you almost the first or second week that I was here in town, and you had just been interviewed for an article in the Sarasota Herald Tribune, and I had heard a lot about you, and your reputation, you know, it spreads, and I just detected in that article a real feistiness. And I'm just curious, have you always been feisty? It sounds like you have been.
Yes. I mean, for little people, somebody told us that's the only way we survive, is if we are feisty. And I mean, I couldn't do much except with my mouth, but that's what feistiness is.
That works. Is there anything that any stories you want to tell about when your mouth got you in trouble?
It never did. I can't remember.
Maybe we should ask people in the audience who are listening in.
That would be a better one.
Well, I'm curious. You know, you talked about growing up and going to public and Amish school. I'm just wondering when you figured out that the world was bigger than Holmes County.
Okay, that started when I went to public school in 5th grade. And that's when I was introduced to history and geography. And those two I absolutely loved, those subjects.
Uh-huh.
So I was always dreaming of, reading up and dreaming and knowing that the world is much bigger. But that was at least head knowledge.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, no, that was it until I was in my early teens.
Uh-huh. And as you got into your teenage years and so forth, did you participate in youth activities and things like that in the church and so forth, or not?
Not one thing.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was too protected. For one thing, I was. It's not that I didn't want to be normal, and I didn't want to be there, but I just simply wasn't.
Uh-huh.
And I was not, and I'm sorry to say it, but with Amish culture, you have to be like everybody else or you do not belong.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really belonged except at home.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, I wouldn't go with the young people because, oh well, they were wild and I wasn't.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And what did you do as far as you grew older? Did you work out? Did you stay at home and work, or did you move beyond and get a job somewhere?
The only job I had in Holmes County was teaching school.
Teaching school?
Yes, I taught first, second, and third grade. Actually, I taught for 8 years. And every student was taller than I was. But that just made them proud. I mean, feel good about themselves.
Uh-huh. How did you get into teaching? I mean, was that something that you must have aspired to be a teacher?
Well, there was one other little person,
Uh-huh.
and she was a school teacher. She was 9 years older than I was. But she taught school for years and years. So that inspired me. And then that was probably the biggest factor that, because I didn't want a factory job. I really didn't want anything but except for school teaching.
How did it go? Did you have discipline problems?
Not much. No, I was usually like the second teacher. You know,
Uh-huh.
there was a older teacher with always more students than I had, like first, second, and third.
Uh-huh.
And we worked together, and there.
Were you in the same room with an older teacher? Or did you have a room to yourself? With
No, it
first,
was the
second?
same room, and then we just
Uh-huh.
had a curtain between the two.
Oh yeah.
That is, we could hear each other but not see each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened after? When did you leave Holmes County?
I left Holmes County in 1977. I was 24 years old. And during that time, before that time, the Pathway magazines came out, Pathway
Pathway Publishing. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
In Canada.
in Canada.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they had Family Life, Young Companion, Black Report. And I would read my grandmother's. She would get the magazines.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, are there really people like that? Or is that just make-believe stories? So, and I decided to find out. And I had some connections there with your cousin,
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we were in contact because her dad was my teacher.
Oh, her father. Uh-huh.
And so I went up there and I couldn't believe it. Nobody looked at me like I was strange. Nobody looked at me because I was a little person. I was just
Katie.
Katie.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I didn't know until much later is that one of their preachers had warned the congregation that I'm going to come up there and they're supposed to tell their children not to be rude. And none of them was. Absolutely none of them was. But the one incident, you know, like Amish churches stand around and you visit
Sure.
and all that. And I walked out the door and one little boy came over to her. I was standing and he said, right here she stood. And another little girl said, you're supposed to shut up. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time. But that left a deep impression on me that I'm going to move there.
You had to move to Canada.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it took me a few years because, like everything goes in its own timing. And I moved up there in 1977 and stayed there for 13 years.
Wow. And what did you do at Pathway?
I worked in the offices, like subscriptions, address changes, and that. And I climbed that ladder until I was the top person on there. And they wouldn't let me die or take off because nobody else could replace me. It was stressful.
Uh-huh.
And finally, and people, they tried to get me help. But you know how getting help, you have to be able to think alike,
Uh-huh.
work together. And finally they said, you choose who you want to work with. So I did, and I trained her every last thing I knew.
Uh-huh.
And then I left.
You trained her the way you wanted it done.
And the way, yeah,
The right way.
the right way. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I had some, people that I was working under.
Sure.
But one of the biggest things I learned there is how to read people or get an understanding. Because I was crawling out of my shell.
Uh-huh.
And just one example, the one that I was accountable to. When he walked in the doors, just the way he opened the door, the way his footsteps were, and I needed something for the office, I would say, not today, kid, not today. He's not in the right mood.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I had to wait 3 weeks until until the doorknob was sounded right, until his steps sounded right. And then I would ask him, and I always got what I wanted.
I'm shocked. Well, maybe you can have a conversation with him if he comes to Pinecraft sometime.
He changed.
Oh, he did. When did you come to Pinecraft?
Okay, after I was finished with Canada, and I moved down to Tennessee, Brooklyn, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there for 6 years. 6 years. And I was finished there. Because it was not what, I was also looking for fulfillment in my heart, something empty in my heart. I was looking for that.
Uh-huh.
And that happened in Tennessee. And then I was finished with that community. I mean, I liked it. I loved living there because we were backwoodsy people.
Uh-huh.
And not even a motor anywhere. And that was my lifestyle. I liked it. But there were other things I didn't like.
Sure. Uh-huh.
And then I had nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
So my cousin from Bainbridge, New York said, okay, to come up to stay with us. We've got a guest house in the backyard. Stay as long as you want to. And I moved up there and I stayed there for 6 years. Just waited out, I guess I did a lot of rethinking, going through that process of reevaluating my life and all that. And then the next winter, I was down in Honduras. There I was teaching school too.
In Honduras?
It was like a homeschool
Uh-huh.
English teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I was down there for a winter, I realized I don't have to be up north in the winter time, ice and snow and all that. And I started thinking of Florida. And so that's how I moved down here. I'm just in the winter times for about 4 years.
Had you been to Sarasota before?
No.
No, first time.
When I came down that winter, that was my first time.
Uh-huh.
I hated it.
Well, you stayed.
Well, I knew it. I wasn't finished.
Uh-huh.
So I came back. I came back again and again until I guess it grew on me. But for the longest time, I didn't know where am I in Ohio? Am I in New York? Am I in Canada? Am I in Florida? I didn't know where I belonged. Because my world was much larger, but I still didn't know where I belonged. So in 2008, I left Florida because I wanted to stay with my dad. He was housebound, but he could still take care of himself overall.
Mm-hmm.
And then while I was there, and I didn't know if I'm going to stay there 5 years or 10 years or whatever. But during that first summer, I came back down here just for a week, just for a break. And I stuck my bike under the Pioneer bus and a suitcase, and I came down here. And I was biking I was crossing Kaufman up here at Yoder's.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I said, this is where you belong. This feels like home. But I didn't know, so I knew I was going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know is it going to be like how long, but I was going to stay with Dad.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went back up, within 2 months, he died.
Uh-huh.
So I was up there only 10 months, and I came back. And in the meantime, my landlord had said that if you ever come back, you have this spot. And my little house didn't sell, They couldn't sell it. So when I saw what's happening with Dad, I called my cousin and I said, did my house sell? He said, no, we just can't sell it. We don't know why we lowered the price, but it just doesn't sell. And I said, can I have it back? He said, yes.
Mhm.
Then I called my landlord, former landlord, and I asked him, can I have that spot back? He said, yes. So there I had the tour. Because I knew when I saw what Dad's doing, he's not going to see the snow fly, or if he does, he's going to be bedfast.
Mhm.
So I had those things in order. And then he passed away in September,
Mhm.
and I came back the end of November.
And did you move here permanently then? Was that when you moved here permanently?
Yes, that was when I
You-
moved permanently,
Oh.
2008.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was over there, not on Burke, back on the,
Truck.
on Schrock,
Yeah.
on Schrock Street, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, when did you get into the photography business? When did you get your first camera?
Well, after I was finished with Cookville, Tennessee, and my cousin invited me to stay with them
In New York?
in New York,
In New York, uh-huh.
I think one of the first things I did was buy a camera. Although it was, and I started taking pictures. And it was more of preserving history, of, just documenting it.
Mhm.
And one of the first things I did after I went back to visit my mom and dad, and neither of them was in the house, I went through the house and I took pictures of every room, of everything. Even Mom's nightgown and all that, because I knew the time is going to come when we have only memories.
Mhm.
And I got so addicted to my camera, I put it away for a year. That's all I could do. But I picked it up again,
Uh-huh.
and so that was the start of.
So when you think about taking photographs, is it about maintaining history or keeping history alive? What do you think about when you're taking photographs?
Mostly maintaining history,
Maintaining history.
and but then, see, for the longest time, nobody in Pinecraft knew I had a camera stuck down in my. Because I would just sit on my bike and pull it out, shoot, and put it back in it.
Uh-huh.
But then Daniel Fisher he was working at Gillis.
Uh-huh.
He knew about my photography, and he published a little magazine that was called what was it called? I can't think of the title.
He published a little newspaper?
Yeah.
It wasn't a Tatler or anything?
Yes.
Pinecraft what?
Thank you. The Pinecraft Pauper. And he asked me if he could use my pictures,
Uh-huh.
and I almost said, because I didn't know what the people will think or didn't say, because they didn't know I was taking pictures. But I said yes. And to my surprise, every time the Pinecraft Pauper was published, there was a whole circle of people standing out around and grabbing their copies and looking if they are in. I was so totally surprised, and that was.
Were they looking so they could be disappointed that they?
No, they were happy.
Oh, they were happy. Okay. Well, that was one of the things I've often wondered about. Since you've been here, you've been here since 2008. How have the Amish changed as far as their attitudes towards photographs? You don't hide the camera anymore. Everybody sees you coming, and they know what you're about. So, do you find?
Okay, I finally made a lot of people disapprove.
Uh-huh.
because it was still, but yet secretly, two Lancaster Amish women, old women, knocked on my door, and they came in and said, Katie, we don't have 10, 21 pictures. We want members. Okay, so I took that route. But many of the people that, when they saw me around, no. And there's
Yeah.
still a few, but not many people.
Yeah.
So, that was like that more or less until the smartphone came out.
Oh, The smartphone, the smartphone you think has changed their attitudes about photographs?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because, well, what really happened was all the younger generation had the smartphones, and the old people don't have. But the old people borrow their children's smartphone to see what I post. That's the present day.
That's present. That's now.
Yeah.
That's the way it is now.
The last few years. Well, ever since the smartphone came out.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I realize, you ride around on your bike, and your perspective is from down here. When I take photographs, yours is from about 2 feet.
Yeah.
You know, mine's about 5 feet. What do you see down there that I don't?
Well, I give that quite a bit of thought. Because I am also dyslexic. And dyslexic things start thinking backwards and go on. Okay, when I look at the pictures of person or so, I use this, I guess I start at the 2 feet. And I look up and up and up and see what, so I see the whole
body.
The whole body.
Uh-huh.
And I know the first time I was aware of that was even before I had a camera. Because I met the almost uncle by marriage, Eli Yoder. He was more than a 6 foot. And I met him and I was introduced to him. And we were both standing close by. So he looked down and I started at his feet and I just looked up and up and up. And finally our eyes met. And we burst out laughing. I mean, and that really is, I think that's what, but then also everything, that is at my eye level is about where the people's stomachs are. Sorry, it is.
You have a wide angle lens.
But one thing I like about that, because I was also a seamstress, and when I lived in Canada, we had a lot of visitors from different Amish groups come through. And just by looking at the dress or the way they're made, I can pretty well determine where they're from. And it's, well, I'm not finding fault, but I'm just simply, that's what I see, that's what I'm observing.
Sure. Yeah, and I just think it's so admirable, I think, whatever the word is, that you're very comfortable taking photographs from that perspective. I mean, I just think you own that space that none of us do here, from where we stand when we take photographs.
I never gave that a thought until people were making comments about my photos being different. And finally I asked, well, what is different? And then they told me that I'm looking up.
Sure.
I didn't realize that. I mean, that was just always my normal viewpoint.
Well, the first time I was aware of it was when you did a photo shoot for me, if you remember, of you were out. I had you out at a barber shop.
Oh yes.
Taking photographs, and I realized that in order to get the perspective that the editor of the magazine wanted, we had to put you up on a chair.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes, I did.
And that was the first time I realized that, oh yeah, you you come at photography from a little different perspective. Yeah. But I think you own that space well, and you I think you're going to be showing some of your photographs off in just a few minutes, and I've just really enjoyed working with you over the years. You know, you and I have both worked with photographers and journalists who've come to Pinecraft to learn about the Amish and Mennonites. How do you decide who you're going? You know, there's a lot of people who I know. There's a lot of people that contact me and you and say, "Hey, I'm coming from wherever. It's been Paris, it's been London, it's been all over." How do you decide who you're gonna help with this and not? Because you're a real door opener when it comes to showing people around Pinecraft. How do you decide who you're gonna work with?
Well, I'm not sure how, but usually if my gut feeling isn't quite right, I send them over to you. I've done that a few times.
You know, I was suspicious of that. Although you sent me some really good people too, but there's been a number that I've had to say no. You know, if they say they want to come and learn more about the Amish, I know right away I'm not going to work with them. If they don't know how to pronounce Amish, I know we're in big trouble. So, is there anybody that you worked with that you thought, you know, this is really interesting? I'd help this person anytime, or are there a couple people like
Well,
that?
there's the two of them that come distinctly in my mind. And the first one was Mickey Mead. She grew up Mormon,
Uh-huh.
but she was a photographer or editor in New York City,
Uh-huh.
and she wanted to learn about the Amish. So she flew into Holmes County. She got on the Pioneer bus, and she got to know the people, whoever would talk to her on the bus, get that experience. And then I was her guide around here, because the bus drivers were not going to be her guide. I mean, they gave her to me. And that was a very pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and she got the people's heart.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody said yes, but she did. Just that bus ride and all that, and someone they like, what's his name? I better not say it anyways. But he couldn't quit talking to Mickey Mead.
Uh-huh.
So she learned to know, and then the other person was Dina.
Oh yeah.
One thing that she wanted, and I did, but I also got paid for it, was stay with her everywhere she went in Pinecraft.
Uh-huh.
And I told her, if anybody objects, send them to me.
Uh-huh.
Well, she didn't send anybody to me.
Uh-huh.
But she also learned how to get into the people's hearts. She would first, visit, talk with them, and make herself acquainted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then she asked permission, and they said yes.
Uh-huh. Riding the bus, the Pioneer Trails bus, I think is really a good way to get connected. I rode down a couple of years ago, and it was such an enjoyable experience, particularly once they found out that I knew all about who my Freundschaft was, and I found my second cousin sitting 2 rows over. The world is pretty small when you're on the Pioneer Trails. If you have Holmes County roots anyway. You ride around a lot, and your bike is low to the ground. I worry about you. I'm just wondering how you stay safe on the road.
Sometimes I wonder too.
Yeah.
But, I try and be very, very careful and let everybody else have the right of way, even if I have the right of way.
Mhm.
Because I would rather stay back and wait until it's clear than try and get.
Yeah.
But it's another thing too. It's that big flag
Uh-huh.
that I start waving in front of there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, would it be okay if I just ask the audience if there are one or two questions from the audience? Are you okay with a question
Yeah.
from the audience? Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? Yes, way in the back. Oh, okay. I can repeat it if that works. No.
Hello. Yes.
There we go.
Hi Katie, it's me, Janet, one of your friends. I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind telling the crowd about how you sold your house and moved with your brother, and the architects worked with you to make your house more comfortable.
That was, I think 3 years ago. And my brother, when they built that house and they put an apartment in for me, and everything is my size. Well, my old one was too. But I chose not to have an outside door coming into my part.
Oh, uh-huh.
Just simply for security, for safety. Because I don't want people knocking on that door after dark or anything like that. So I mean, absolutely everything is fixed for me.
Mhm.
And I can live as worldly as I want to. You know what that means.
Uh-huh.
Or do without whatever I want to.
Yeah.
I pretty well do what I want to do.
Uh-huh.
But it's fixed for exactly that.
For that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've been in it. I was in your other place, and I looked in your place where you live. You know where you live now, and I remember that that it's made for you, which is really special. Another question? Yes.
Does your camera allow you to not confront people? That's adversarial, but does that allow you to get through to people and allow them to photograph them versus going up to somebody and talking to them? Does your camera help you in communication?
You know, I never gave that any thought. Because when you're Amish, you don't ask permission. Because they're obliged to say no. But
Oh, you mean you don't ask an Amish person if you can take a photograph? Yeah, generally,
yeah,
because they're obliged to say no. Yeah.
I mean, at least that's the old rules.
Uh-huh.
But then if, I will destroy it if they tell me to, if they don't want it. Because I do respect people. And if they come up personally and tell me they don't want to, I don't aim at them, because they have that right. But we do have that agreement if they just happen to be in a crowd, and they're in there, but I didn't aim at them. That is okay with both of us. Did that answer your questions? Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Katie. I've enjoyed getting to know you a bit better. One more? Oh, yes. Okay, right down here.
Have you ever done any of the developing of your pictures, and do you use a digital camera now, or what kind of cameras have you used throughout the years?
I'm using a digital cameras now. My first camera was film. But, no, I mean just Facebook, some photographs, the calendars, but I've never, not like this. Uh-huh.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
all.
you very much. Thanks, Katie, and thanks, JD. So thank you so much. So before we can all sort of go and see the beautiful pictures that Katie has taken over the years. I just want to remind you that next week on Thursday at 7 p.m. here, JB Miller will give a talk about the history of Pinecraft, and the week after, the Thursday also, Stephen Knoll is going to give a talk about the growth of Amish communities in the United States. There are cards out there on your way out where you will find information about the different events. And I just want to remind you that the exhibition is going to be here at the Carlisle Inn, which we want to thank again the Carlisle Inn for hosting all of the events until the 24th. So you can come during the day and see the pictures, and in the month of March there will be the new collection Florida. So now you're all welcome to walk around. I'm sure you can also talk to Katie or JB and ask questions, and there are refreshments and some desserts provided by the Carlisle, and they're from their Dutch. So thank you everyone for coming. This was a great showing today, and I appreciate it.
Excuse me. That was very good.